In the shadowed heart of the Pacific, where the sea whispers secrets to those who dare listen, the Imperial Japanese Navy's submarines prowled like ghosts in a dying dream. It was 1944, the third year of a war that had turned the endless blue into a graveyard of steel and salt. The Empire's undersea warriors, men forged in the fires of Bushido, their hulls etched with the rising sun, had once ruled these depths unchallenged. From the coral chokeholds of Guadalcanal to the typhoon-lashed approaches of Midway, their torpedoes had struck fear into the hearts of American convoys, sending leviathans to the abyss. But now, as the monsoon rains lashed the decks of forward bases like Truk Lagoon, the tide of battle had shifted. Admiral Minachi Koga's once mighty fleet lay scattered, fuel-starved and phantom-thin. The submarines, those silent assassins, were the last thread in a fraying tapestry. Among them sailed the I-29, a sleek Type B-1 boat, 108 meters of riveted resolve, commanded by the steely-eyed Lieutenant Commander Kenji Sato. A veteran of the Solomons campaign, Sato was a man of quiet ferocity, his face a map of scars from a depth-charge barrage off Savo Island, his eyes holding the unblinking stare of one who had seen brothers swallowed whole by the deep. Aboard the I-29, in the suffocating tube of her pressure hull, 20 souls breathed in rhythm with the diesel's growl. There was Ensign Taro Nakamura, barely 22, a poet from Kyoto whose diary pages, yellowed now, salvaged from the wreck, spilled ink like blood. The ocean is our mother and our grave. Tonight, as the stars pierce the periscope, I dream of cherry blossoms on the Kamo River and wonder if I shall ever taste their fleeting pink again. Beside him, Chief Petty Officer Hiroshi Tanaka, the boat's grizzled sonar man, whose hands trembled not from fear, but from the ghosts of Malaya, where he'd lost his left ear to a British hunter-killer. And in the wardroom, the young radio man, Petty Officer Second Class Akira Fujimoto, scribbling letters to a wife in Nagasaki, letters he knew would never sail home. They had slipped from Yokosuka under a blood moon, August 15th, bound for the Marianas, Saipan, Tinian, Guam, where the Americans were clawing their way north like a cancer devouring the Empire's flank. Sato's orders were ironclad. Interdict the supply lines, sink the fat-bellied oilers feeding Nimitz's armada. The sea is ours, he'd told his crew in the dim glow of the conning tower, his voice a low rumble over the hum of the electric motors. As long as we breathe its breath, it bends to Yamato Damashi, the spirit of Japan. But the ocean, that capricious jade goddess, had begun to betray them. For months, whispers had filtered through the ether, crackling enigma intercepts, frantic dispatches from U-boat allies in the Atlantic. The Yankees had unleashed a new demon. Buoys, tiny harbingers dropped from the bellies of Catalinas and Avengers, bobbing like driftwood until they awoke with a mechanical snarl, their hydrophones drinking in the symphony of the deep. Pings that pierced the veil, summoning destroyers like hounds to the fox. It was the 22nd of September, off the eastern fringe of Saipan, where the water deepened to abyssal black at 200 fathoms. The I-29 ghosted at periscope depth, her snort mast gulping air like a drowning man. The night was velvet thick, broken only by the phosphorescent wake of distant gunfire. Peleliu's Inferno, 100 miles south, where Marines bled red into the surf. Sato, hunched over the search periscope, swept the horizon with predatory patience. "Surface contact bearing 270, murmured the watch officer, Lieutenant Minoru Ikeda, his breath fogging the rubber eyepiece. There, adrift in the current, bobbed an anomaly, a white canister, no larger than a sack barrel, tethered by a slender line vanishing into the blue. Not a life ring, not wreckage from some shattered freighter. Sato's brow furrowed, the scar on his cheek twitching like a live wire. "Mine?" ventured Tanaka from the sonar shack, his voice a gravel whisper over the intercom. Or a decoy? The crew stirred in the crimson gloom. Fujimoto pausing mid-sentence in his letter, Nakamura clutching his diary like a talisman. "Prepare to retrieve," Sato ordered, his tone clipped as a katana's edge. "We take it aboard. Intelligence will feast on Yankee tricks." The deck party, 6 men in oilskins, faces slick with spray, swarmed the casing as the boat rose like a breaching whale. Grappling hooks bit into the buoy's skin, hauling it over the rail with grunts and curses against the swell. It clanged onto the wet steel, innocuous as a fisherman's float, painted in drab olive with stenciled markings. U.S. Navy property. Do not tamper. In the forward torpedo room, under the merciless beam of a battle lantern, they pried it open. Nakamura, gloves slick with seawater, unscrewed the lid, his heart hammering a taiko drum in his chest. Inside, a tangle of wires, a reel of magnetic tape whirring faintly, and a hydrophone dangling like a serpent's tongue. "It's listening," he breathed, as Tanaka knelt beside him, tracing the circuits with calloused fingers. A switch, innocent, unmarked, flipped under Sato's gaze. Then it awoke. A shrill whine pierced the hull, echoing through the boat like the wail of a banshee. Not mechanical. No, this was alive. A high-frequency screech that clawed at the eardrums, reverberating off the bulkheads. Ping, ping, ping. The sound of the sea's judgment, active sonar pulsing outward, painting their silhouette in invisible fire. Fujimoto recoiled, crossing himself in the old Shinto way. "Gods preserve us," he muttered, but Tanaka's face drained to ash. "It's one of theirs. A sonobuoy. It hears everything. The props, the pumps, our very breaths." Sato's fist clenched on the chart table, knuckles whitening. In that instant, the ocean transformed. No longer the vast forgiving cradle of their youth. It was a snare, a lattice of invisible threads spun by American ingenuity. This was no lone sentinel. They were adrift in a thicket of them, sewn like dragon's teeth from the flight decks of the Essex-class carriers prowling the Philippine Sea. Each ping a summons, calling the destroyers, the USS Laffey, the USS O'Bannon, steel wolves with hedgehog mortars and depth racks loaded for apocalypse. "Secure it! Jettison!" Sato barked, but the damage was done. The buoy's tape had captured their signature, the I-29's propeller cadence, her electric hum, a siren's call broadcast on radio waves to any Avenger within 50 miles. Alarms blared as lookouts scrambled to the bridge. "Aircraft contact! PBY, low and slow, bearing 015. Ikeda's cry sliced the chaos. "Dive!" The klaxon wailed. 2 blasts, the devil's tattoo, and the boat plunged, flooding tanks in a froth of bubbles. Water roared over the freeboard as hatches slammed, the deck tilting to a perilous angle. Nakamura tumbled into his bunk, diary pages scattering like fallen leaves, his mind flashing to his mother's face in the Kyoto dawn, her hands folding origami cranes for his safe return. "We're blind in our own element," he scrawled later, in a hand blurred by adrenaline, "hunted by echoes we cannot outrun." Down they went, to 150 meters, the pressure squeezing the hull like a vice. Creaks and groans answered the strain, rivets weeping, paint flaking in protest. In the control room, Sato gripped the periscope pedestal, his voice steady as granite. "Steady as she goes. All ahead slow." But Tanaka's headphones crackled with doom. More pings, fainter but multiplying, a chorus from the buoy's kin. And then, the thunder of propellers overhead, the bloom of sonobuoys splashing like rain on a tin roof. The hunt was on. For hours, eternities in that iron coffin, they evaded. The American destroyer, a Fletcher-class beast named USS Radford, materialized on the plot like a specter, her Aztec pulses lancing the dark. Boom! Depth charges erupted in geysers of fury, the concussions slamming the I-29 like hammers on an anvil. Lights shattered, gauges spun wild. Fujimoto's radio sparked and died in a shower of blue fire. "Hull breach forward!" came the cry from the torpedo room, where a seam had wept seawater, ankle-deep and rising. In the midst of the maelstrom, bonds forged in fire. Tanaka, blood streaming from a gash on his brow, manned the hydrophones alone, whispering bearings like a confessor. "Green 30, closing fast, evasive, rudder amidships." Nakamura, pressed against the bulkhead, recited haiku under his breath to steady his crewmates. "Ocean's vast mirror reflects the soul's quiet storm. We dive, unbroken." Sato, pacing the dim-lit bridge, paused to clasp each man's shoulder, a silent vow. "We are samurai of the sea," he said, his words cutting through the din. "If the waves claim us, let it be with honor, our spirits rising like kamikaze to the sun." The Radford's barrage was relentless, a symphony of destruction. Ash cans tumbling in patterns, 10 charge spreads bracketing their depth, horseshoe throws curving around the baffles. One blast buckled a plate in the engine room, scalding engineer first-class Daisuke Mori with live steam. He screamed once, then silenced it with gritted teeth, stuffing rags into the rupture as oil-slicked water lapped his boots. "For the Emperor," he gasped, collapsing into the bilge, his resilience aflame in the flooding dark. Dawn crept in from above, a pale smear on the sound-powered phones. The pings faded, not mercy, but relocation. The sonobuoys had woven their web. The I-29 was marked, a pariah in the deep. Surfacing under fire, Sato gambled on the horizon's mercy, blowing tanks in a silver plume. They broke through to gasping air, lungs burning, the deck awash in foam and shrapnel scars. The Radford's guns barked, 5 inches straddling the conning tower, but a lucky squall cloaked them, and the I-29 limped south, trailing oil like a wounded shark. They made Ulithi Atoll by nightfall, a ragged shadow slipping past the atoll's coral teeth. Of the 20, 5 lay still in the sick bay, Fujimoto among them, his last letter clutched in rigid fingers. "Tell her I saw the sun rise on the waves one final time." Nakamura survived, to pen his account in the flickering light of a kerosene lamp. His words a requiem. "We touched the Yankee's eye, and in its gaze saw our empire's twilight. The ocean was no longer ours, not by right of blood or blade, but by the cold arithmetic of science and steel. Yet in that hour we were unbreakable, our valor etched deeper than any scar." The I-29 would sail again, only to meet her end off Leyte in October, torpedoed by the submarine USS Halibut in a twist of submerged irony. Sato went down with her, his final order a defiant banzai echoing in the crush. But in the annals of that war, amid the 52 lost boats, the 28,000 souls consigned to Davy Jones, lies a truth as enduring as the tides. The human spirit, resilient as barnacles on a foundering hull, defies even the abyss. For in the Pacific's unyielding roar, valor was not in victory, but in the unyielding dive, the choice to face the ping, the charge, the encroaching dark, and whisper to the depths, "We are here."